diet. But first, each week at this time, we turn our attention to diet and nutrition. What should we be eating? What shouldn't we be eating? How can we make sure we're feeding our bodies in the most nutritious way possible? This week, we're focusing on our children with a special focus on gluten-free, sugar-free foods. Is this the type of eating that's good for our kids? And what can we do to make it appealing, especially if they're craving carbs and sweet treats? Catherine Barnhoorn is a certified integrative nutritional health coach and the author of Mila's Meals at the Beginning and the Basics, a 500-page collection of over 100 gluten-free, sugar-free, dairy-free recipes and food ideas. Catherine says that this way of eating has helped her heal from several autoimmune conditions. And after noticing that her daughter reacted badly to the same foods as she did, Catherine made the decision to raise Mila on a free-from diet. That's free from gluten, free from sugar and free from dairy. And I'm delighted that Catherine joins me this evening. Hi, Catherine. Welcome to Late Nights.
Hi, good evening, Sarah-Jayne. Thank you.
No, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. So tell me, what sort of problems were you experiencing prior to rehauling your diet?
Well, it was a long journey from when I was young. I didn't realize it at the time. But through my life, when I was a child, I had recurring tonsillitis, had my tonsils out. I had acne as a teenager. I then was diagnosed with endometriosis. I had eczema, a whole range of seemingly unrelated conditions. And after I gave birth to my daughter, my eczema flared up terribly. And I started going back to a gluten-free, sugar-free, dairy-free diet, and the eczema cleared up. And I was breastfeeding my daughter, and I realized that if I didn't eat those foods, she didn't have colic anymore, she didn't get constipated. A whole lot of her issues were resolved by me not eating that food.
Were there any foods in particular that you discovered were the main culprits, or was it just anything with sugar, gluten and dairy in?
Well, for me, it was anything with gluten, sugar or dairy. And it was instant. I had eczema on my hand, on the palm of my hand, and literally 20 minutes after eating those foods, my skin would split open.
Wow. Sure, that's incredible. Did you try other ways of eating before going sugar, gluten and dairy free? Were you sort of looking at different types of diet? Were you on the internet researching things?
I was diagnosed with a Candida overgrowth when I was 19. So at that stage, I was put on a sugar-free, yeast-free diet and a whole range of supplements to clear up the Candida infection. And once that was gone, I was young and
yeah.
I was at university, so I did that for 3 months. Then I was better, so then I just carried on like normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How long once you went sugar-free, gluten-free? I know that you said it was immediate, but in terms of noticing a longer-term difference in how you felt generally, how long did that take?
Well, it had reached a point where, because I'd carried on eating those foods, which I was reacting to without knowing, I ended up with something called leaky gut, which is basically when the lining of your colon has holes in it.
Oh, my goodness.
And a lot of people do, actually, and they don't realize. And what happens then is partially digested food is going through the lining of your colon like nutrients should. But these are bigger pieces of food, and your body is launching an immune response. It's attacking the food particles, basically. So I'd reached a stage where I couldn't even eat a baby marrow, and I was in agony. And so I went on a gut healing diet called the GAPS diet, the Gut and Psychology Syndrome diet. And I followed that strictly for 3 months and then carried on loosely with the principles for 2 years. And after that, I can now have some milk in my tea, or I can eat a pizza every now and then without my skin splitting open. So you can temper the reaction if you heal the gut. So for me, it was 2 years.
Yeah, sure. Did you find that you benefited in other ways? Were you sleeping better? Did you have more energy?
Goodness, I was sleeping better. My emotions were more stable. I wasn't on this emotional roller coaster.
Sure.
My family and everyone would tell you that they always thought I was I had quite a temper, and I could was quick to anger.
Yeah.
And after following this way of eating, I didn't have that anger. And it was quite bizarre. 3 months after following this way of eating, and I went for my pizza because it's all I could think about. The next morning, I woke up so irrationally angry. Before anything had happened, I was angry.
Wow.
And so I've just realized it's almost like the foods you're intolerant to make you intolerant.
Yeah.
In terms of emotions.
Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. How easy is it to source products that are in line with your specific diet?
Nowadays, it's incredibly easy. When I started writing the book, which was 4 years ago, and I live in a small town as well. I live in Neisner. So there weren't the food products that you have now. But it's incredible, the food innovation and the food products that are available now. And so it is easier. It is much easier.
I want to talk about the book in just a minute, but let's talk about your daughter Mila first. You say that you noticed that she wasn't responding well to certain foods. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I was breastfeeding her, and I noticed if I ate dairy and then breastfed her, the next time she made a poo, it was bright green.
Wow.
It's like the color of grass green. So that was a bit strange.
Yeah.
And also she suffered terribly from colic. She would sleep for 20 minutes at a time, day and night. She needed to be fed every 2 hours. It was difficult. And then when I removed those things from my diet, she slept for 2-hour stretches. Her poos were a normal color. It was quite incredible. And so I realized she must be intolerant as well, also because of genetics and things. So when I started feeding her solids, I just didn't include those foods. And then when I did on the odd occasion, because cheese is really easy to feed a child. It really makes for an easy meal.
Yeah.
And I'd give her some cheese, and within 20
pasta.
minutes... It's so easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they love it. They
Yeah.
eat it. You don't have to force feed them. So, so with dairy, should be congested within 20 minutes, completely blocked up.
Sure.
If she ate gluten, she would be constipated, severely constipated for days. And anything with sugar in, which she didn't have until she had her first sugary thing. I think she was 2. And honestly, it was frightening to watch.
Sure.
Her eyeballs went in different directions. She was wild, and that was the first time she ever had what resembled a tantrum.
How old is she now?
She's 5.
How do you make sure that if she goes to sort of have play dates or at school, that she's not going to be given food with sugar in or gluten or dairy?
That is the tricky part. It does get difficult. But the school obviously knows who I am.
Yeah, yeah.
I also did tell them, and I told them why and my reasons for it. So at her school, she has tuck every Friday. A different child can bake something at home and they bring it.
Yeah.
And so for her, I send her own tuck to school. On the odd occasion when I haven't had time to do that, then I say, okay, well then you can have your friend's tuck. But she's completely fine with that. Now that she's older, from when she was about 4 years old, I always have been conscious of the fact that I don't want her to feel different or isolated. If she was diabetic, then it's fine. And I've got a very clear reason for saying absolutely no sugar ever. But I'm also very conscious of her being a girl, and I don't want her to grow up with food issues.
Absolutely.
So now that from when she was 4 years old and we went to birthday parties, previously I would take her own treats for her to eat. But now I say to her, no, we're going to a party. You can have the food there. But I do it in a conscious way. So I walk with her to the food table. We dish some goodies up. I take her to the side. We sit, and she eats consciously. So she's aware that she's had her plate of treats. And then she goes off. Because often at these parties, it's just they're playing so much, and they just keep going back to the food table, and they don't even know that they've eaten a lot and they're eating more. So I just make her conscious of what she is eating. And she never asks for more. She often doesn't even finish the whole slice of birthday cake. And also another thing now is because she's not used to it, she'll eat half of it, and then she'll slap her little hand to her chest and say, "Mommy, I'm feeling sugary." So she's aware of how it makes her feel now.
Does she know? I mean, obviously, as kids, we're given what we're given, and my mom was very similar in terms of she didn't want us eating junk food. I think I had my first McDonald's at the age of, I want to say about 13, because that was the age at which sort of my feet could do the talking, and I had my own money and I could go and disappear off and do what I wanted to do. But we weren't allowed sugar in our tea, and we weren't allowed sugar on our cereals and all that sort of thing. Is she aware of why?
Yes, I've made that very, like a very big thing. I want to say, it's something I'm also very conscious and aware of, because when she does go for play dates and when she is at places where I'm not, I want her to be empowered to make that choice. So from when she was about 3 years old and she asked for a piece of normal bread, I would say, okay, you can have it, but it's going to make the poopies get stuck. Do you want the poopies to get stuck? And then she'd look at me and say no. And then I'll say, well, don't eat that bread. So I've always brought it back to how that food is going to make her feel, or how that food is, what effect it's going to have on her, so that she is aware of that, and so she's empowered to make those choices for herself.
You raised an interesting point a minute ago about not wanting her, particularly as a girl, but obviously we know that men and boys suffer from sort of food issues too, but particularly for girls and for women, and not making it an issue. Are you not worried that even by sort of creating a situation where there's good foods, bad foods, that she might pick up on it somewhere, that, or feel when she's a bit older, well, I want to eat this, but mummy would be very disappointed. Are you confident that wouldn't happen?
Well, the first thing is, I don't say good foods, bad foods. I don't want the good, bad thing.
Yeah. I
say healthy foods that are going to grow your brain, make your body strong. And then I call the other foods nonsense foods.
Right.
So, and I let her have nonsense foods sometime, but, and that's fine. So but I don't want the judgment. It's either food it's going to nourish your body and help your body, or it's food that's not going to help your body.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt she's going to rebel. Kids will rebel to whatever their parents did.
Yeah.
As part of growing up. But I'm hoping that by setting the stage, when she does go off to university or out into the big wide world and she does binge on McDonald's and pizza, that she will feel so violently ill that she won't do it very often.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately, and this is something that I've often thought about, is, when I get round to having my own children, that I don't want them eating sugar. I just absolutely don't. I've spoken to enough dietitians doing this show who say, there is no good reason why our children need to be eating particularly additional sugar. If I had a rand for every time a dietitian had said to me, why on earth are people serving their children things like apple juice? I'd be a millionaire. My concern is, well, what would happen when my kids get to school? What if they go to, I don't know, Tandiwe's house or John's house, and Tandiwe's mum or John's mum says, oh, here, have a glass of Coke. I mean, it strikes fear into me.
Well, there are two things there. I think, firstly, parents must be aware that they do have a voice in the school and what happens in the school. And I think it's really important for parents to go into the school and to see what's available, say, in the canteen or the tuck shop, or how frequently treats are being served at the school, and then voice their feelings on that, or what they would prefer. I'm lucky in that the school Mila goes to, they have a no junk food policy. It's as simple as that, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
Kids
and that's becoming very common, isn't it?
In their lunchbox. It is. And I think also for teachers it makes sense, because the thing about sugar, besides the physical health effects, is it affects behavior.
Yeah,
for
sure.
And if you're feeding your kids sugar in school, it creates problems for the teachers as well. So that's one thing. And then in terms of going for play dates, Mila's just recently been to 2 birthday parties. And I was so floored, actually, and really amazed and grateful. Both moms had made special party packs for Mila.
That's the
sugar-free
sweetest
ones,
thing.
gluten-free ones, and I found that really, really amazing. And I mean, that's fantastic. So I think if you stay true to yourself and your beliefs, and you surround yourself with good people, they will respect that.
That is so true. Just tell me, we're kind of going off on an aside. I mean, what are your thoughts on parents? Because I have some quite strict ones, and people say, well, you wait till you become a mum, SJ, then you'll just give them whatever. And I genuinely don't think I will just give my children whatever. But, you walk down the street and you see kids with, big chip bags or in McDonald's and drinking Coke and juice, and it blows my mind. It blows my mind. I wouldn't feed my dog stuff like that. It really baffles me. And people will say, well, you don't have a place to speak, SJ, because you don't have kids. Well, you do have kids, Catherine. So What are your thoughts?
Do you know, from a lot of parents I've spoken to, they're not actually aware of what's in that Coke and what's in that packet of chips. How is that possible? I mean, they might know there's a lot of sugar, but they might not even be aware of how detrimental that is. Sure. I think that's first. Another thing is, someone else I knew once asked me, quite often in fact, how on earth can I spend so much time in the kitchen making vegetable juices and making all this food? And my response to her was, I'd rather spend my time happy in the kitchen than spend my time looking after a sick child or a child that's out of control. So that's my choice. And I think a lot of times parents think, oh, give them this food. It's the easy way. But they're not seeing that they're then spending more time disciplining a child or taking care of a sick child. Perhaps they're not making that connection.
It just seems like a very strange, and I'm probably going to come across as being very judgy here, but it just seems like a really strange, which I'm okay with, it just seems like a really strange thing that you have this precious child, and yet you would fill this child with food and drinks that are proven to not be good for them and to not be nutritious. And I'm not talking about, and I know that some people will come back on me and say, but yes, SJ, for some people, having affordable fruit and veg and X, Y, and Z is a problem. I'm not talking about people in that situation. I'm talking about people who have the means and the wherewithal to buy healthy, nutritious food, but choose to buy clearly unhealthy food, snacks before dinner time and things like that. I don't get it. Juice in a lunchbox every day when we know how bad it is for our kids.
I was actually following this a post on one of the Facebook groups. I'm on a lot of mommy Facebook groups and nutrition Facebook groups, and someone had posted a photo of her young 4-month-old child eating her first chomp.
I can't handle it.
and I was just following this conversation, but for her and for the people that or agreed with what she was doing, they see it as a treat. They see it as, oh, the child's getting to taste this, and this. They obviously feel chocolate brings joy, and they feel by giving their child chocolate, they're bringing the child joy. So my whole thing is, and they see it as treats. They see this kind of food as a treat.
But the baby's 4 months old. Babies don't need treats at 4 months old, do they? Do they?
Well, breast milk is a treat.
Yeah, I mean,
breast milk is a treat.
The treat is a roof over your head and food in your mouth. It's not a chomp.
Well,
it's that I've managed to keep you alive for 4 months, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also a point I make in my book and at all the talks I give is that, and to my parents, in fact, is that it's treats, not sweets. So treats for an older child is a day at the beach or a new set of cookies or an extra story in bed, more of your time. Those are treats. It doesn't have to be food, because
I think that's very dangerous, actually.
It's emotional eating. Yeah. I truly believe that's what later leads to emotional eating.
I do too. The link between food as reward as opposed to food as nutrition for our bodies. Let's talk more about the book. When did you decide to write it, and why specifically?
It was a few months after Mila had started solids. So I was gluten-free, sugar-free, and dairy-free while I was breastfeeding her, and then she turned 6 months old, and I had to feed her solid food, and I was the most anxious first-time mom ever. And here I had this pure baby, and I didn't want to pollute her body. And I got a whole lot of baby recipe books, and there was gluten, sugar, and dairy on every single page. And I couldn't find any recipes that didn't have those three things in them. So I started substituting and creating my own recipes. And when I had 18 great recipes, I thought, wow, there must be other moms tired and stressed in the same position. These 18 recipes can help them. I'm going to write a book. And that was it. And I don't know how it got to 100 recipes and a 500-page book, but I just carried on writing and researching and just felt there had to be more information in there. And so, yes, that was the 3.5-year journey.
How challenging was it to compile all these recipes? I mean, were you borrowing from here and there? Were you in the kitchen until all hours of the morning trying to perfect the perfect recipe? How did it work?
Well, it started, I had a few basics, but then obviously the older Mila got, her needs were different. So it wasn't just purees or finger foods. Then she needed things like a bread or a muffin. So I would create them for what she needed. And yes, I started by looking at a normal recipe that had wheat and gluten and sugar in, and then I'd start substituting, and there were many trial and errors before getting it right, because obviously all the different ingredients react differently when you're cooking with them. But I was just guided by what I wanted Mila to be eating. And then I'd create the recipes, write them down, and because the book took so long, she kept eating different foods, so I kept adding more recipes, and so that's how we went.
Wow. Okay. You firmly believe, don't you, that food can be the best form of medicine, or on a juxtaposed state, the slowest form of poison. Tell us a little bit more about why you think what we put into our bodies is, and it seems to be proven with you. You seem to be living a very healthy life. But if somebody's sort of listening in now and is thinking, we're really struggling in our family, we're all feeling lethargic, we're not sleeping well, the kids are sort of running all over the place, they seemed really hyped up. Why do you think of food as medicine in that way?
Well, I think the important thing for people to understand is that the food you eat literally becomes the cells of your body. So the food gets digested, the nutrients get absorbed, and those nutrients go into your bloodstream, and they actually build your body. So it's the same as you wouldn't put rubbish petrol into your car because it's going to mess up your engine. It's exactly the same. And so foods that are good for you, foods that are natural, that are whole foods, that aren't processed, feed your body in a healthy way. Processed foods cause inflammation. And inflammation is another root of all disease. It's chronic inflammation. So it's really what you put in is what you get out. So if you put junk food in, you're going to get junk out. You're going to junk food, junk moods. It is the way it is. I mean, your body is made from food.
Yeah, absolutely. How important is it as a parent to also sort of play food detective by looking at food labels and checking whether they do contain gluten or sugars or dairy, if this is a lifestyle that people want to adopt?
It's incredibly important, and not even for gluten, sugar, or dairy free. You should read the food labels on everything, because we were intolerant to these foods, so we don't eat them. But we also don't eat processed foods, and that's because of the preservatives, the colorants, the flavorants. I mean, there are so many chemicals in our foods these days and those are triggering responses, allergies, eczema, behavioral issues. It's incredibly important for parents to read. And also, again, when you go, I walk around the supermarkets. I don't often buy a lot of food there, but I walk around and I read the labels. And parents are buying things like fruit rolls or dried fruits, thinking, these are healthy.
Yeah.
And then you read the labels, and there are 2 chemical preservatives on there. They've added vegetable oil. They've added an artificial colorant just to make it, look more orange, and a ton of sugar. Yeah. So something that started off healthy is no longer healthy.
Just do you eat fruit? Do you eat fruit?
I do.
Yeah. So you're not worried about the fructose in fruit. And I mean, obviously you wouldn't drink milk, but you're not worried about the sugar that's forms naturally in fruit.
The thing is in fruits is nature gets it so perfectly right. So if you eat a whole apple, yes, there's fructose in there, but there's also the fiber, which is a mechanism to slow the release of that fructose or sugars into your bloodstream, which is why once it's processed into apple juice and the fiber is taken out, yes, then you're going to get a lot more sugar because you're probably going to be consuming 4 apples worth of juice, and then the sugar is going to hit you harder. So in terms of that, no, because Mila gets absolutely no artificial or refined sugar from anywhere, she eats a lot of fruit. And I'm okay with that, because I think it's in balance. And I also think fruit has so much more to offer. It's not just fructose and fiber. There's all the phytonutrients and the antioxidants. There's so much more in the fruit than just the sugar.
Yeah.
But when it comes to fructose, the fructose you buy in a granulated form or high fructose corn syrup added into foods, that is incredibly not good for you.
Yeah. Can you just give us an idea of what you would typically eat in your house on any average day, on any given day, and what would Mila be eating, for example?
Okay, so for Mila at the moment, she starts the morning as soon as she wakes up. I give her a plate of snacks. It seems to be a genetic thing. We get hangry if we don't eat.
Yeah, I relate
regularly. So, and her snacks it's fruit roll. I call it fruit roll with her, but it's actually more vegetables, dehydrated into a roll. So that's got vegetables, a little bit of fruit, and a whole lot of superfoods in. She has that. And
do you make that? Sorry to interrupt.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I do. She doesn't eat vegetables. She won't eat anything that looks like a vegetable. So consciously, when she found out potato chips, French fries were made from potatoes, she refused to eat those anymore. So it's a conscious decision on her part. So I've had to get clever. But this fruit roll is my absolute lifesaver. She eats it 3 times a day. And for example, she's onto green at the moment. She goes by color. She's asking for the green one. And it's got steamed apples in, sweet potato, kale juice, moringa powder, baobab powder, spirulina, chlorella, chia seeds, hemp seeds, coconut oil, and some pineapple.
Wow.
And so that she's got everything she needs for the day in there. She's got the fats, the proteins, and all the veggies. And she eats that 3 times a day.
Right, okay.
So, yes, sorry, that was the snacks. And then for breakfast, she's having smoothies, superfood smoothies, or a slice of gluten-free toast with nut butter and honey. And then she goes off to school, and in her lunchbox is more fruit leather, nuts, some fruit, some date balls, maybe a sandwich or some gluten-free breadsticks, and hummus, maybe a sandwich or some gluten-free breadsticks, and hummus and carrots. She's eating carrots at the moment, the first vegetable. And then when she comes home, she'll have some more snacks, and then for dinner, she's not a big meat eater, and she goes through phases. So maybe some chicken, maybe some gluten-free boerewors, some more fruit leather, some fruit. What else? She had some gluten-free noodles tonight. Oh, and she's on egg whites. She's loving boiled egg whites.
Catherine, it has been such a treat speaking to you and so fascinating. If people want to get hold of your book or your blog or website, where can you direct us?
Sure. So the website is milasmeals.co.za. I'm very active, most active on Facebook. So my Facebook page is Mila's Meals as well. Mm-hmm. And then the book is available from Faithful to Nature, Take a Lot, Loot, Yappy Chef, and quite a few others. And the full list of stockists is on my website.
Wonderful stuff. I wish you all the best with it, and I'll certainly be checking out that website. Catherine, thanks so much for joining us this evening. What an absolute pleasure.